Well, hello everyone. I know it's been a while since I've seen all of you live, but what a joy, of course, to be with you. And I want to wish all of you a blessed Christmas celebration and also a blessed New Year's. Today is a special day simply because I am in our studios, and with me here, a very special guest and a dear brother, of course, Dr. Jay Smith. And that's why the title that we have chosen indicates something about the work that he's been doing and the work that we've been collaborating in and the many series that we've been airing here in our channel and his channel, Fonder Films. The origin of Islam and this particular topic, and whether it's about the religion itself, the direction of its prayer, the Qibla, whether about some of its rituals, and even its book, the Quran or its man, is gaining popularity in a way that we haven't seen it before. In fact, one of the series that we have just released on my channel, known as the creating the Quran, based on this book by Dr. Stephen Shoemaker, has been really giving us huge number of views, not because of anything that we have changed, other than the fact that the topic itself is extremely intriguing, and there is many interest, or many people are interested in this particular research that we are doing today. By the way, we wrapped up this series. We ended up doing 62 episodes. So it's going to take about a year and almost 3 months for this particular series to be completed. We encourage you, of course, to buy the book, but we did the best we can by the help of our Lord and also the assistance of Dr. Jay Smith to synthesize this whole book for you and adding a lot of supplemental material that you will find it extremely helpful. Of course, with me here, as I stated, Dr. Jay Smith. Dr. Jay, welcome back as always, brother.
Hey, it's good to be here, and I'm just looking at the list. I see Islamic origins. Hi, Mel. Mel, good to see you. He's watching. We see Randall Hill and Marcus Haas and Muntasir Haider Mahi. Terrific to have you guys all the way from Deutschland, from Germany, and from Ireland. We've got some good goherts there. Mel, you're especially a real shout out to you because you've helped us so much on all this material. You've done such a great job of unpacking. Right now we're going through the whole name of Muhammad, and he has been at the forefront of a lot of the research that we're doing. He knows this material as good as you and I know it, and has been such a great help.
And Mel, you're hearing it from both of us. We would love to have you here with us in studio, not through Zoom, but in person. So we're going to work on that.
Bring you over. So that would be one of the next things, to have all three of us together, working together. I can't think of a better time and a better place to do it than right here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So why is this topic gaining this momentum, Jay?
Yeah, I think that, and this is something that we've known. I mean, Mel and I have talked about this for many years. You and I have done so many episodes, 62 just on this one book here that we just finished today. But we have been doing this for quite a few years now. This last year especially, it seems to have exploded. I'm wondering, I'd love to know the reason. My wife and I, we went to Italy in September, and then we went to Switzerland at the end of September, and that's all they wanted to hear. They're in Italy, they wanted this in Switzerland. Then I took off, and I had gone to California earlier at the beginning of September, and with the Ministry to Muslims conference. And while I was there, one of my supporting churches, Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills, asked me, Jack Hibbs, the pastor, asked me to do a 1-hour rendition. He said, everybody wants to hear you put it all together in 1 hour. You've been putting out so much material, lots of material on Muhammad, lots of material on Mecca, an enormous amount of material on the Quran. Can you now put it together in just 1 hour? Well, how do you do what takes me, when I'm teaching it in my MAPI course, 16 hours? How do I put it together in just 1 hour? You can't. There's no way you can do that. So I said, I'll try. So I did that. In the beginning of September, they put it up on 2 of their sites. I've now put it up on my site. Over 1 million people have watched it as of yesterday in the 3 sites. If you add them all 3 together, over 1 million people. That's an enormous amount of numbers for just something that's not entertaining. This is not, we're not sitting there doing song and dance. We're not being funny. We're not doing anything that would create those kind of numbers. Unless, of course, this is really hitting a nerve. And that showed me that it's hitting a nerve. So much so that just 2 weeks ago, they asked me to go back to California. So 2 Saturdays ago, I was back in California to unpack it in 4 hours. What I had done 1 hour, they wanted in 4 hours to about 1,000 people that had all signed up. You had to sign up. You had to register before you could even come in the doors. And yet they were all there. Now, something else that has happened, and I think this is which underlines it. I had also been asked to go to European Leadership Forum next year. And the reason why is on their forum site, where they put all their videos up there, the one video that I did back in 2019 on this very material, now that's 2019, that's 4 years ago, nothing like what we have today. I did an hour-long video when I was there at the ELF, European Leadership Forum. It has jumped to the top of the list. It is now 1.4 million views.
Amen.
And half of that has just come in the last 4 months. Just shut out everybody else. Diane Lamberg, it's all gone way ahead of John Lennox and all his videos that are up there. And so I got an email, not a phone call, an email from the head of ELF saying, you've got to come back in and do this. Everybody wants to hear this there. So this is hitting a nerve. And I think the reason why is because when you look at the book, The Man and the Place, so we're talking about the Quran. That's what we've been going through today in these 62 segments. You talk about the man, Muhammad. We're looking at whether or not he existed in the 7th century. And when you look at the place, Mecca itself, when you talk about these 3 areas, they are all codependent on each other, and they're all foundational to Islam in every way. You take out just one of them. You take out one of those legs, and the whole stool falls to pieces, especially if you take out Mecca. If you take out Mecca, then if there's no Mecca, then there's no Muhammad there. There may be lots of Muhammads, and if there are many Muhammads, there are many references to men called Muhammad, the praised one, that's what it means, in the 7th century, but not from Mecca. They're all from Gaza, they're from Damascus, they're over in Hira, they're in Ctesiphon. These are places in Iraq and Syria and in what is today Jordan today. Nothing way down south. So when you take out Mecca, then you can pretty well shut down Muhammad, at least that Muhammad. Many other Muhammads, but not that Muhammad. And if you take out Muhammad, then what do you do with this book? Well, obviously, this book, if you look at it, it actually comes from many different sources. It comes from a lot of different pieces of text that are Zoroastrian, that are Ethiopic, that are Syro-Aramaic, that are Jewish apocryphal writings. It is an amalgamation of many different texts.
Yeah.
Those pre-existed. And so what we're showing is that almost all of this can be explained if we just go back to the 7th century. Let's just go back and see what we do find. I mean, Mel's been doing this. This is something that LaFontaine has been doing. This is something that we have the Inada group in Germany. They have been doing this since the last century. And that's why it's important that we do this. People that I have had contact with, like Dr. Patricia Corona, who's headed me up when I started my doctoral program. She was the one that has probably done this better than anybody else. And she can do it more than anybody else because she speaks 18 languages. So when she started asking these questions back in 1977 and 1987, all the way up until she died in 2015, wrote enormous amount of material, did an enormous amount of work unpacking the origins of Islam, just looking at historical evidence, When she started asking these questions, she didn't know where she was going to go with this. And when she wrote Hagerism in the very first page, she said, this is a what-if scenario. And that's all she could say in 1977. She made some mistakes there. We all make mistakes because all this flooding material that's coming in, she had no idea what to do with. By 1995, 1995, when I took her material and I debated Dr. Jamal Badawi at Cambridge University on just 10 historical challenges that she had found. I got it from her the week before. I went and gave these 10 historical challenges. At that time, Dr. Jamal Badawi said to me, and he says, listen, all you're doing is arguing from silence. And he says, the absence of evidence does not necessarily mean the evidence of absence. And I was stymied. He was right. He was correct. Just because I couldn't find any evidence doesn't mean that there was no evidence didn't exist. It's just that it didn't exist in 1995. There was a huge amount of silence. There shouldn't be silence, but there was. Therefore, there's nowhere I could go. Any left, right, or center. And that was 1995. Well, suddenly now, this evidence is now pouring in. We're now finding rock inscriptions. We're now finding coins. Rock inscriptions, coins, these are things that don't disintegrate. These are things that don't deteriorate. They are as hard as ever as almost the day they were minted. They're almost as pristine as the day they were minted. We can now look at them and we can follow what they're telling us. And the story they're telling us, it does not fit the Islamic traditions. We now see buildings. We need to see mosques. Dan Gibson's material on all the Qiblats, they are not facing the right direction. They're not facing Mecca. We can't find any reference to Mecca. We're looking at the maps. Look at all Ptolemy's writings on the geography. Nothing at all about Mecca. There's nothing there. We can't find any place that's called Mecca at all until 741. That's almost 100 years after Muhammad. We can't find any reference to this guy, Muhammad, not the one from Mecca. We're finding lots of references elsewhere, but not for this guy. And we don't find anybody that's received the Quran. We can't find any reference to the Quran. We just got into did that in those episodes today. No reference at all from a book called the Quran in the 7th century. And when we find someone like John of Damascus, who finally is the first to introduce this book, look and see what he, in 730, in his book about the heresy of the Ishmaelites, look and see what he calls this. But he doesn't call it the Quran, but he does talk about 4 books that are in this book. And notice what he talks about. He talks about the book of the cow, that's Surah 2. He talks about the book of the table, that's Surah 5. And he talks a book of the women, that's Surah 4. And then he talks about the book of the camel. Hold on, a book of the camel? There's no book called the camel. There's no surah called the camel. Yeah. So obviously it's not the Quran that we're talking about. Now, this is written in 730. He's there in Damascus, right where the Quran's been put together by Abdul Malik and by Al-Hajjaj. He was there. He was eyewitness to what was happening. And yet the Quran he is referring to is only 3 chapters of 114 chapters. So even as late as the 8th century, it still had not been put together correctly. And you can see then why we're now confronting it. But we're only using evidence. Notice, we're using evidence from the 7th and 8th century. Now, everything that Jamal Badawi told me in 1995, where I'm talking from silence, back in 1995 was true. I'm no longer talking from silence. Now I'm talking about coins. That's not silence. I'm talking about inscriptions. They are not silent. I'm now talking about buildings. They are not silent. I'm talking about all kinds of manuscripts. The Topkapi, the Samarkand, the Ma'il, the Huzeni, the Petropolitanus, the Sana manuscript, these 6 major manuscripts, they are not silent. They have to be read. They have to be heard. And we've got to look and see what they tell us. And now we're talking about the actual reference points of the Qira'at. I mean, look what Hatun Tash was able to find just by finding 30 different Qurans.
Even more than that.
Well, 37 is what she found, but 30 official Qurans that existed up until 1924. No 2 are alike. And look how much damage that did, showing that the Quran, even when it was finally put together in its consonantal form, then had all these qira'ats and these ahrufs and all these diacritical marks and all these vowelizations that were added all the way up until the 10th century, caused such a dilemma that Ibn Mujahid had to bring it down to 7, and then al-Shatibi in the 12th century had to bring it down for another 14, and then al-Jaziri in the 15th century had another 9. So now we have 30 different Qurans that she was able to find in 2016, and we were able to hold it up so the whole world could see. So these are things that we're now coming up with that I didn't have with Dr. Jamal Badawi. We now have it today. And because we have so much material at our disposal, we need to go forward. We need to show the world that the Muslims have got to deal with this. They can't just keep running away. And they can't keep on saying, this is all silence, Jay. This is all silence, Al-Fadi. It's no longer silent. This is material that has to be dealt with. And that's why it's so good to see a guy like Stephen Shoemaker, who wrote this book just last year. He bring this book out because this is what we've been waiting for. We've needed a scholar, someone of his caliber, of his class, to come up and actually write down what everybody's saying. And if you look at this book, it's just full of quotes after quotes after quote. Dorosh, and he's quoting Noldeke, and he's quoting Schwally, he's quoting all the best. He's quoting Crone, he's quoting Cook, all these great scholars, and he's just showing you, he does an awful lot just on Hoyland. And he shows you in almost every case, when you look at the quotes, folks, just read and see what the scholars are coming to. They are coming to conclusions. And the conclusions they're coming to are very damaging concerning the standard Islamic narrative. But it's good to have it all in one place. That's why I encourage you, buy this book, go get it. It is full of treasure troves, which made your and my job a lot easier. That's why we spent 62 episodes just on that book. Because it is saying what we've been trying to say, but in a scholarly standard, in a scholarly context. It is now he that is now admitting that there was no Mecca at all in the 7th century, not even in possibly the beginning of the 8th century. It is he that is saying that all this material that's in the the Quran, all these discussions that are in the Quran, these are theological discussions that can only take place where there are Christians and Jews, and there are no Christians Jews that far south. Robert Hoyland said this in 1999. So this is not new. This is not new material. This has been around for 25 years, 26 years. So you can see why we need to get this out in the public sphere. We need to get into and bring it out, unpack it so people can use it, and then we need to come to conclusions. That's what no one wants to do. No one wants to do that except for Mel. Mel's the only one that likes to come to conclusions. God bless him. He's been such a stalwart. And that's why we need to make sure that when we come to conclusions, that the Muslims then have to come back and give us a response. Where is that response that the Muslims are giving? They're not dealing with us. They're just using ad hominem. And they're calling us all kinds of names. And that's not the way that you deal with peer review. Not at all.
Yeah. You have, we get babblers on our show every now and then. We have a babbler by the name of Raphael that says, you're an actor, and Shoemaker's book was poorly put together, basically, very poor, and even Shoemaker contradicted himself. Would you like to address that?
He doesn't give any examples. He just says that. That's called ad hominem. Ad hominem is when you attack the character of the person. He says, I'm an actor. I'm not an actor. I'm a hopeless actor. Ask my wife. Ask my sons. They hate the way that I act. I cannot act whatsoever. And interesting, if you're going to come up and come with those kind of ad hominems, and I'd ask Raphael, where is it that I have gone wrong?
Yeah, he's right here in front of you, by the way. You can see his comments.
Raphael,
right here.
Show us where Shoemaker has contradicted himself.
Look at what's so interesting. He's talking about the dating because it was the most damaging thing Shoemaker mentioned in there.
Okay, he's talking about the carbon dating.
Exactly.
Right, the carbon dating. And he looks at the Sanaa manuscript, he looks at the Tübingen manuscript, he looks at the Birmingham manuscript. As Raphael, have you looked at those findings from Lyon, from Kiel, from Zurich, and from Oxford? Have you looked at them? They are hundreds of years apart. See, Raphael hasn't even read what Shoemaker did. Do you know what Shoemaker found? Have you looked at the Tübingen manuscript? The Tübingen manuscript contradicts itself depending on whose study you're going to look at. You can't just take one study from one laboratory and then say, therefore, the case is closed because they have found one study. You've got to go to 4 different studies from 4 different laboratories on the same piece of manuscript. And then look and then tell me that Shoemaker is incorrect. That's why it's so good that Shoemaker has
Raphael,
answered this question.
You said you have examples. I'm going to give you exactly 5 minutes. And if you don't know me, Raphael, you're going to get to meet me today. 5 minutes. You list them one by one. Give me the page number. We have the book in front of us. 5 minutes and I'll bounce you out. Go ahead. The clock starts ticking right now.
So write what these arguments are. I'm going to keep talking because you see what he's coming up with. Yeah. The carbon dating is probably the most damaging thing that Shoemaker says when it looks at the manuscripts. What other thing is the dating for the manuscripts that they claim. If you look at the dating of the manuscript, they start from 388 up until 665. So if you're just going to go with the 665, what about the earliest dating, 388? And see, that's coming from Lyon itself, the laboratory in Lyon that has the much earlier datings. This all is way before the Quran was put together. This is in the 4th century, folks. And so therefore, if you're going to say that, then you're going to have to come up and ask, why is it you're not taking the earliest date? Why are you taking the latest date? And what's more, in fact, why is it that 4 different labs come up with completely different dates using the same scrap, they're using the same parchment, the same page, the same surah? I think it's chapter 27. I can't remember the exact verse they're using. So because of this, you have to be careful of the attacks you're giving against Shoemaker. He is using and he's showing that this is a category that most people haven't dealt with. And the difficulty that I think that he's going to have is show me a manuscript that is from that period that doesn't use carbon dating. You need to use paleography, you need to use codicology, and you need to use the decorations that are in the manuscripts.
Okay, so here's a reference. He's saying that Shoemaker used Deroche for dating of manuscripts. He didn't just use Deroche. He quoted Deroche, and he used many others as well.
No, what does Deroche say? Look and see what Deroche says. Deroche looks the Tübingen, and he puts the Tübingen manuscript to the mid-8th century.
That's why he's burned, by the way. Because
750
he's upset.
is what Deroche says. Read what Deroche actually says. Now, how did Deroche come to that conclusion? He said because of paleographical evidence, because of the decorations that are on it.
Exactly.
Because of the fact that they use diacritical marks in that manuscript. You don't have diacritical marks that early. These diacritical marks, these vowelizations, the dots that were there were added in the 8th century. Therefore, he puts it to the mid-8th century. So quote Deroche correctly.
Yeah, Raphael, show us the claims where he refutes himself. You have exactly 3 minutes left. Now, you know why he's upset, of course, because Deroche was attacking our friend, basically Van Putten, who relied on the Tübingen, And because of that, he is making this big claim that you can trace everything we have today to one archetype that was written during the time of Uthman.
Yeah, and this is something you have to be careful with. I mean, what Van Putte did, he took one study done by Sadeghi and Uramen, who's a German and an Iranian who work in Stanford University, done in 2007 from one surah. And he says this shows that this is from about 15 years after Muhammad, that therefore it is about the same time that Uthman. Therefore, we can stipulate that the Sana manuscript must have come from the time of Uthman. What he did, you need to go and see what happened later. Who's the French scholar? Can't remember his name off the top of my head right now.
Christian
Robin, R-O-B-I-N.
Yeah.
Robin then took that same manuscript, that very same manuscript that was done in 2007.
Sent it to 3 different places.
Sent it to 3 different places in Europe, Lyon, Kiel, and also to Zurich. And he found out that same manuscript was all the way back to the 4th century, 5th century, and 6th century.
Exactly.
Exact same manuscript. The
336, I think, all the way up to 600.
So it had a covering of over 200 years, and all of which predated Islam, predated the Quran. So he's saying you be careful about be careful about using carbon dating. And the reason why is this: carbon dating only dates when the animal dies, and it uses the carbon deterioration of that skin. And when that skin starts to deteriorate, it deteriorates at different speeds depending on what environment it's in. What's interesting is the edifice of carbon dating that we use comes from 2 different areas of the world. One is United States and the other is Northern Europe. These manuscripts were in the Middle East, which is much drier. So therefore you shouldn't be even using those scales. And that's why the scales are all off for something that is in a much drier environment, where the carbon is at a much different speed. What's more interesting is when Robin went and used 3 different surahs from the Sana manuscript, again, asking the carbon dating for the 3 different surahs in the Sana manuscript, he got completely different dates again. And he says, well, this stands to reason. Why? Because if you're writing a manuscript, you take a page from here, you take a page from here. These are written on animal skins. The animal skins are from different parts of the world. They've been sitting in warehouses. They've been sitting in people's stores. They've been sitting in people's houses. And what you do is you take a little, like we do today, but in that case, you have to, they're very expensive, so you have to grab the parchment where you can find them. And therefore, they come from many different sources, many different environments.
Exactly.
Therefore, they will have completely different dates. That stands to reason. But what you can't do with carbon dating is you cannot date the time that the ink was applied to it. That's what everybody's getting confused at. And so therefore, if you're going to put together a manuscript that is around the time of the 8th, 7th century to the beginning of the 8th century, then you're going to say that's the time of Abd al-Malik and al-Hajjaj. That would make sense why these then were put together and grabbed from many different sources, and that's why they don't agree on the dates the animal died.
Yeah, and obviously, Raphael has no clue how dating is done anyway, because if we want to take the dating even seriously, that means the Quran, as we know it, existed before even the birth of Muhammad.
Yeah. Now let's look at the...
Gedalia, I want to talk to our basically moderator. Gedalia, please bounce our friend out, block him. We don't want people like him back in our channel because he couldn't prove a single thing, didn't provide us with a page reference, nothing. Babblers come like parrots. We're used to that. Thank you.
He's repeating, DeRose accepts the calibration date.
Exactly. That's what he's doing.
He does it. Read it again. He now pretty much says we cannot trust radiocarbon dating for just that small period of time, and what's more, it does not fit what the other manuscripts are showing. Now, let's go to the Birmingham Folio, because the Birmingham Folio is something that I have no problem with, the dates from 568 to 645. That doesn't bother me. Because the Birmingham Folios, if you take a look and see what they say, these are all pre-Islamic to begin with. These are pre-Quranic. And they're from they're 33 verses over 3 different chapters, but not even the entire chapters of those 3. There are 330 verses in those 3 chapters in the Quran today. So they're just bits and pieces of those 3 chapters. What's interesting, look at the stories. There are 3 different stories. One is the 7 sleepers of Ephesus. That's a pagan story. One of the story is of Jacob of Sargas. That's a Christian sectarian account. And the other one is the book of Moses, which comes from the Old Testament than the Bible itself. Completely different stories from completely different sources. They would have all been in existence at the time that the 7th century, so I have no difficulty believing that if you want to say that these are correct, that's fine, because everything that's in the Quran is borrowed from other sources anyways. If they're borrowed, that means they have to predate them. They have to be there from beforehand. So stories like that would make sense because they would have been written in Arabic, both Quranic I'm sorry, both Jewish and Christian and pagan stories.
Amen. And it's kind of interesting, how whenever something goes against the standard Islamic narrative, people get really upset. They get belligerent. They don't have any proof whatsoever to refute the argument, and they, turn to, as you said, ad hominem, and that's all they can offer. I mean, we gave him a chance just to give us a page. Just tell me, page number such and such. We went through the whole book, and unfortunately for Raphael, that he wasn't able to successfully prove us wrong or prove even Dr. Shoemaker wrong. So, brother, where do we go from here? Because we want to wrap up the live stream right now.
Before we just finish that, even let's just say that Shoemaker is wrong. Let's just say that Dorosh is wrong. Let's just say that carbon dating is exact. Even if that were the case, what are they carbon dating? They're carbon dating. They're carbon dating the stories that are in the Quran that would have been there before the Quran was put together anyways. These are the original stories.
But also they're carbon dating the leather, not the ink.
And where are these leather parchments from? Are they from Mecca and Medina? No.
No.
Not one of them is from Mecca and Medina. That's the other problem he's going to have. So I don't even have a difficulty believing that there were lots of groups up in what is today Syria and in Iraq and even as far away as Jordan. That there are places in Petra, in Ctesiphon, and also in Damascus that would have had these stories and would have written them in Arabic, because Arabic was the language, the language of the people who are not theologically astute. This is the language of the people who are on the traders. They were not in theological discussions, not the Arabs. The theological discussions that were happening in the 4th, 5th, 6th, up until the 7th century were happening in the large cities, and they were happening in seminaries. And the seminarians were all speaking Syriac, and they were writing in Syriac. You didn't have Arabic that early. That's why Arabic is so crude. It is not a theological language. And so therefore, if there are writings that are being translated into Arabic in the 7th century, I don't have a difficulty with that, but they are not part of Mecca and Medina, because there's nothing happening in Mecca and Medina. There's no one living that far south. There are no Jews or Christians that far south. So you cannot have these theological discussions, which the Quran is replete with. Even the Arabic that is in the Quran today, look at the Arabic in the Quran today. It has the tar marbuta. It has the alif maksura. It has the definite article. It has the irabs. These are 4 inflectional vowels that are endings of words that are used in the Quran right through the Quran today. That did not exist in Mecca and Medina, because that is a Nabatean Aramaic, which comes from way up in what is today Jordan, 600 miles further north. That Arabic is 600 miles too far in the north. The Arabic that would have been used in Mecca, Medina, if the Quran came from that part, is Sabaic. Sabaic does not have the Tad Marbuta or the Alf Maksura or the definite article. So what is Raphael going to do with that? Even if you want to admit that maybe the carbon dating is correct, it's the wrong Arabic from that. That Arabic did not exist that far south, and it certainly did not exist in Mecca, Medina. Mecca didn't even exist that early anyway, so you can see why that's a real problem. They're going to have to come up with that type of support. I don't see that happening.
Of course, of course. Thank you, brother. And where can people go, once again, to check your channel?
Fander Films. It starts with a P, P-F-A-N-D-E-R, F-I-L-M-S. Or just put Fander Films, J. Smith, and it'll go right to it. But listen, this is all going up on Sira International. It's going up on Fander Films. I know that Mel's going to be putting it up on Origins, which is you need to really check out. He's got some amazing new stuff that's coming out on the name Muhammad. The name Muhammad is not a person in the 7th century. It's a title. It means the praised one. And they're tracing it back. A.J. Dios has actually traced back this word, this title, all the way back to 1400 BC. This is a well-known name that's used in both Hebrew and in Arabic. It is used in Aramaic, and by the 4th century AD, it's referring to Jesus Christ himself.
Yeah, I want to just show you something that is so interesting, by the way. One guy by the name of Kamal, this is something dropped in my pocket. This is the reason why Jay doesn't appear on platforms other than controlled platforms with yes men. You spent 26 years
25 years.
At the speaker's corner.
Every Sunday.
Every single one
Taking
of the people over there were yes
the
men?
Yeah.
Were they yes men over there?
None of them were yes men. I got beat up. I got punched. I got my glasses broken. You can see where the Muslims try to open up my throat. So I have been in the fray. I'm getting old now. I'm 70 years old. I will go to Speaker's Corner when I'm in London to help Hatun Tosh out, but I no longer go there anymore. I'm too old for that.
Wonderful. Thank you, brother. And everybody, we encourage you, of course, to subscribe to Founder Films and subscribe to also Sierra International. And also, we're always looking for people to become a Patreon supporters for my channel and for his. So thank you, everyone. Have a blessed Christmas and New Year's. And until we meet again next time in another live stream, which I'll be doing one hopefully very soon about the meaning of Christmas, everyone, have a blessed day. And brother, thank you so much. And thank you for those who were able to join us, even though some of you are past midnight probably, like, for instance, our brother Mel. God bless, and we'll see you soon. Take care.
We'll see you, Mel. God bless you. Love you, guy.